Have you ever had a moment that completely shook the ground beneath you? A moment so unexpected, it forces you to question everything you thought you knew about love, loyalty, and even yourself. That's the story I want to share with you today, because what happened to me wasn't planned, wasn't even imaginable. Yet it changed me in ways I'm still trying to understand. My name is Carol. I'm 52 years old and have been married to my husband, Michael, for nearly 25 years. By all accounts, my life was steady, comfortable, and safe. We had our routines, the morning coffee he always poured for me before heading to work, the evening walks around the block, the way he'd squeeze my shoulder gently while passing by in the kitchen. Nothing extraordinary, but it was ours. One late spring afternoon, Michael had to leave suddenly for a business trip. The house was so still that I could hear the ticking of the clock echo across the room. I'd almost forgotten what silence felt like. With no one to tend to, no conversations to carry, I sat on the couch with a book, feeling a rare sense of peace. That peace didn't last long. A knock at the door startled me. When I opened it, there stood David, Michael's younger brother. He was in his early 40s, tall, with that easy grin that had always made people comfortable around him. At family gatherings, he was the one everyone gravitated to, though my own interactions with him had always been brief. "Hey, Carol," he said, stepping inside without waiting for me to invite him. "I was passing through town and thought I'd stop by." I smiled politely, though inside I wondered why he was here, and why now. Still, I offered him coffee, and we settled into the living room. Sunlight filtered through the sheer curtains, casting golden stripes across the floor. At first, our conversation was light, about Michael's trip, about old family stories, about how fast the kids in our extended family were growing. But as the minutes stretched into hours, something shifted. His tone softened. Mine did too. What started as casual conversation turned into something more vulnerable. He shared regrets, half-finished dreams, and the way he sometimes felt invisible in the shadow of his older brother. And for the first time in years, I found myself listening not just with polite attention, but with genuine curiosity. I hadn't realized how starved I was for that kind of connection, for someone looking at me as if I wasn't just Michael's wife, but Carol, a woman with her own story. At one point, our hands brushed on the couch. It was so small, so innocent, yet it sent a jolt through me. The scent of his cologne mingled with the lavender candle I'd lit earlier, and suddenly the air felt heavier, charged. He didn't press closer, and neither did I. But our eyes lingered just a little too long, and in that silence, there was an understanding neither of us dared to voice. When the sun dipped lower and shadows stretched across the room, David finally stood to leave. His gaze held mine in a way that made my heart pound. No words were spoken, but everything was said in that glance. That afternoon marked the beginning of something I hadn't seen coming. That night, when Michael called from his hotel room, his familiar voice grounded me again. But in the quiet that followed, I couldn't shake the memory of David's eyes, the warmth of his presence, the way he'd listened. The next day, a message appeared on my phone. It was from David. "Can we talk?" My heart raced as I agreed to meet him at a small cafe out of town. We sat across from each other, coffee growing cold between us, while he finally said what we both had been feeling. "What we had yesterday, it was real. But it complicates everything." I nodded, my throat tight. "I know. And yet." We agreed to be honest, at least with ourselves. To see where this fragile connection might lead without rushing, without lying to ourselves. Over the next few weeks, we met a handful of times. Sometimes in quiet cafes, sometimes walking through parks where the rain softened the air. Those conversations weren't about passion or recklessness. They were about honesty, about the parts of ourselves we'd hidden beneath years of duty and expectation. One rainy afternoon, as we walked slowly under a shared umbrella, David stopped. He looked at me with an intensity that made me tremble. "Carol," he said softly, "you've opened something in me I didn't know existed." Tears stung my eyes. "You've done the same for me. And it scares me. But it also makes me feel alive." Back home, evenings with Michael grew more complicated. I watched him laugh at a TV show, his face lit up in that familiar way. I noticed the lines at the corners of his eyes, the small gestures of kindness he'd always given me. I did love him. But now I understood that love wasn't simple. It wasn't always enough. One night, as we sat on the porch swing, Michael turned to me. His expression was gentle but searching. "Is everything okay? You seem distant." I hesitated, then whispered, "I'm figuring things out. Sometimes life surprises you in ways you don't expect." He squeezed my hand. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." I wanted to believe that. David and I never rushed. Every step felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to see if the ground would hold. Our connection wasn't built on recklessness but on something deeper, a quiet rebellion against the ordinary. It was a secret that reminded me I was still alive, still capable of feeling something new. Months have passed now, and the story doesn't have a neat ending. Maybe it never will. But here's what I've learned: love isn't about clean answers or easy paths. It's about complexity. It's about holding space for contradictions, for bravery, for honesty even when it scares you. And maybe that's the most important lesson of all. That it's never too late to rediscover yourself. Never too late to open your heart to new possibilities. Never too late to admit that you're human, flawed, searching, and still deserving of love in all its forms. If my story resonates with you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts. I'd love to know if you've ever faced something that made you question everything you thought was settled. Because in the end, none of us walks this journey alone. Until next time, take gentle care of yourselves, and remember, life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it.